Hello, good evening. It's another wonderful Sunday evening. You're welcome to IMPOUNDED here on Metropolitan Television. IMPOUNDED is proudly brought to you by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Ghana Revenue Authority, Goyle Company Limited, Serene Insurance, and Ghana Link Network Services, the operators of the Integrated Customs Management System at the ports. Now, our media partner on IMPOUNDED is the Business and Financial Times, and so if you want to have a grasp of all that transpired tonight on the show, make a date and grab the Thursday edition of the BNFT, and you'll be able to see all that transpired here. We are going to be getting interactive with you, so you can send us your messages ahead of the show via our WhatsApp line, which is 0559-019-177. 0559-019-177. We'll be glad to share your messages with the rest of the world. Along the line, again, we shall be getting interactive. And this time, you would have to pick up your phone and then dial our number. When the time is due, we shall announce the phone lines. We're also streaming live on our social media handles. Facebook, you can watch us at Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, GPHA Ghana. Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, GPHA Ghana. And on YouTube, we are at YouTube, that's IMPOUNDED Ghana. IMPOUNDED Ghana. We are streaming there live as well. You would get to watch us. My name is Kennedy Mona. We are back shortly.
Goyle makes good things happen. This time, Goyle has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goyle Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goyle Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Goyle Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Goyle Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goyle has that sorted. Goyle, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
All right, so you're welcome back. We now go for some local stories and happenings in the port of maritime industry in the course of the week. And the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority donated some dental equipment to the Insawa medium security prisons. Plus, the fact that the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Honorable Samuel Abujinapo, was at the Tema port this time again because of some Rosewood that was seized. We understand these were 13 containers, and he had to reaffirm government's commitment at fighting the canker of importing or exporting this particular rosewood species, which has been banned by the government. Let's take a look at these stories.
Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, Samuel Abujinapo, has handed over 13 impounded containers of rosewood to the National Intelligence Bureau in Tema, estimated at $234,000 or over 1.4 million Ghana cedis. The 13 containers of rosewood imported into Ghana from Nigeria, suspected for onward export to an overseas destination, were impounded at the port of Tema. A high-level collaboration and intelligence gathered between the Ministry of Lands and other mandated state agencies led to the confiscation of the containers at the Tema port. It was subsequently deposited by customs at the Overseas Commerce Ghana Limited terminal, an uncleared cargo list terminal in Tema. Speaking to the media after inspecting the impounded containers and handing them over to the NIB, the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, Samuel Abu-Jinapo, said government took the issues on the harvesting, importing and exporting of the endangered species with utmost seriousness and was dealing with it in a transparent manner and in the context of enormous integrity.
It is because we have put an outright ban on the instructions of President Akufo-Addo on the export of rosewood, which is why customs, working in conjunction with national security and other state agencies, have confiscated this wood. And I want to once again use this opportunity to commend the High Command of Customs, particularly the Tema Port leadership, for the work they've done, and also to say that the investigation is becoming wider now.
He said investigations had already commenced, and it was clear testimony that the policies, measures, and enforcement regime put in place were working, hence the confiscation of the rosewood by customs, working in collaboration with mandated security agencies.
We are very convinced that there is a very sophisticated cartel syndicate involved in this trade, and we think that the national security can unravel that. That's why we've requested a national security architecture to assist the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources in unraveling, so that we get to understand the full contours of this cartel.
He said it was about time that some measures were developed to confiscate trucks conveying rosewood or other contraband products for import or export. According to him, these trucks, when confiscated, will be given to the state, adding that it could be a deterrent intervention, and the ministry was considering that among other gamut of remedies. The Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority has donated some dental equipment to the medium security prison at Nsawam to support the Ghana Prison Service carry out its mandate of ensuring the welfare and safe custody of prison inmates. These include an ultrasonic scaler for scaling and polishing, some dental forceps for extraction, and dental syringe for administering local anesthesia. Delivering the equipment to the medical unit of prison service, representative of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Judith Cedro, said GPHA is happy to associate with the provision of services that would inure to the well-being of Ghanaians and would continue to render assistance to the prison service where possible. Regional Commander DDP Samuel Owusu-Amponsa said the donation would go a long way to promote the establishment of a well-functioning dental unit at the Nsawam Medium Security Prison that caters for the welfare of inmates and staff.
All right, so that donation formed part of GPHA's corporate social responsibility. We'll now go for the Goil TV market. And the Goil TV market, as we always say, is to showcase some of the services and products of one of our lead sponsors, Goil Company Limited. And premium is always placed on the Goil Super XP Ron 95. And this week's edition comes to you from the Ashanti region, Kasi Service Station to be specific. Enjoy.
Goil, in the service of the nation.
Stations are what middle belt. Service station, the filling station. You can't even know 71. That is small man Ghana. You cover Ashanti region, any part of Bono. You free Kumasi, that is Greater Kumasi, and as you first acquaintance, so you could do Yaji. If you Kumasi Asosona, you conquer you call Echo could do Yaukui into Upe filling station as a service station be a walk on the Swa and the middle belt, Oko Boise, and so free Kumasi ha near Co Echo do Dunka on thing. And normal baby and a tongue, Kumasi Aso Ufriha, now say Oko Sunyana Swa, middle belt Echo could do a Buakwa. Goil, Super SP Ron 95, and a tongue. Across the nation, and your middle belt on Kwa, Goil filling station, and service station, Bubiano, a tongue Super SP Ron 95, and a sad tongue, diesel XP, and so Goil filling station and service station be a.
Answer the street now, Baba Baby. Young, your 20 year coffee. So, see, you're not a day, and your papa and son are my farm and I day. Abba. So, lady, a answer, and son, I don't have time to you. Your chef, Essa, your papa and son, I day, and lady, Abba, station. You're the best person where you are. Answer and your workplace in one obey every form of a tank. Ono nso hwɛ sɛ deɛ kaa no de aba no ɛyɛ papa ansa na wayɛ dɛ wagye agu. Apart from that, machine kɔ station ɛkɔhwɛ sɛ fuel no a yɛde brɛ wɔn na egu fam yɛyi agu fam awie ɛno ara na wɔn gu so yɛ dɛ ɛtɔn ɛde ama mo. Baabi a bɛsɛ bi a yɛde ɔdeɛ no ɛyɛ 95 ɛna yɛtɔn.
SP3 a draw at the stop and it's now Super XP, Diesel XP, XP3 and the boom. But flows are necessary to the treaty. Other OMCs now on treaty, you know. Of course, now we to Bohoa, Area Mawa, on treaty, Unuma, Udaya. South and South Flow, a coal car one, a house engine. SPC additive now, a work well flow. A young number be brave. So we talk if we will go along. We not if I should be brave. We can't say a thing this year. We see the mount. Say, ensure a war, flow number a change, a female mount, a clean injectors mount. A council amount more mileage. But I want to go through and look at India program. What the car in one, which means a car, with ya every day. India, the amount of things you can learn your better time. I'm a talk, well, the who can in Antiatina, he had a master. Ron 95 for no, if I saw a Benano, and the SP3 no, a man here extra power, time 3. Not to say a bonanza and a when extra bonanza. Yo, now where the Matthew? Na Muka, Maka Serumiano. And yes, baby,
you say, go no, would you go, okay, more system no? Hey, come on. At times, I need to injectors, injectors in here, but me used to go no. In farm, you be uncle, baby, as I'm a copeg injectors. Come me to quite Diana, Aya, Nameba, Aya Cassia, the Puha, and Ameba. Yes, me recommend more beer. So, car who used to beer, the best food I meet my, I recommend your way. Go.
Me used to go for no, my whole difference be pray. I was driving a human. First, na me used to coconut be, but me used to coconut. Se si na me engine na wu. Na ngu sie ba bebre. Ba me used to go for no. Ma hunu say engu sie no e mato. Ana esan so maka edwane. Ana esan so yi car mu engine mu efin. National no your stations in about 450, I 460. Baby Abakobia, Ubenya Super SP 95, Ubenya Diesel SP 95.
North, south, east, and west, we always stand for the best. Goil is good energy.
All right, so you're welcome back. And that was the Goil TV market, which came to you from the Castle service station in the Ashanti regional capital, Kumasi. Now, tonight we are discussing how to develop a robust maritime industry for effective continental trade. And I want to see what role the maritime industry plays in the scheme of things as far as continental trade is concerned. And we are all aware that Ghana is playing host to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement or Free Trade Area Secretariat. That's the AFTA Secretariat here. We have it in Accra, a very prominent building. And I was at a seminar at the Holiday Inn last week, and that was organized by the Good Governance Africa, Madam Tema Asante-Apietu and her team. And it came to light that Ghana was way ahead of her compatriots in terms of the implementation of AFTA. We are running and some others are still crawling. And if we are way ahead of our competitors, what do we have to do to ensure that we remain that way or we continue to blaze a trail? And so that's the question we're asking tonight. How do we develop a robust maritime industry to aid effective continental trade? And so tonight we have assembled a team, and I'll go straight and introduce them to you. We have Dr. Emmanuel Kofimbia, who is a maritime law consultant and a legal practitioner at Alliance Partners. He's also the immediate past Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Shippers Authority. Good evening to you, Doc, and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you.
We thank you for always gracing our show anytime we give you a call. And we also have Chief Mohamed Obosu. He is the Executive Director of the Institute for African Maritime Development. Thank you very much, Chief, for joining us. Good evening, and
Good evening.
We appreciate your presence here. Now, let me start with you. Tell us about your institute. That's the Institute for African Maritime Development. What is it about? What do you do?
Good evening to your viewers, and I must say that I want to say that I'm very much privileged.
Can you position your mic? Yeah.
Yes, I'm very much privileged to be able to share this common platform with the Venerable Dr. Kofi Mbia, who is a global authority in international maritime affairs.
Absolutely.
So I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
Yeah, great. So tell us about the Institute for African Maritime Development.
So what the Institute stands for, we seek to promote maritime development at the continental level. You agree with me that there's a lot of lagging behind when it comes to the development of our African maritime domain. So we seek to do that through advocacy, research, capacity building, and training. So what we want to do, we want to bring all the stakeholders and governmental agencies together so that we can judge and see how we can move and drive the build together the maritime industry in Africa, which is developing at a very slow pace.
Right. And how long have you been operating?
We began this year, so I must say we are still in the
You're an infant
stage,
yet.
so,
Okay.
Yeah, so we have some series of programs that we have put in place that we want to push to drive the agenda.
All right, I know the likes of doctors still around. I mean, they would be guiding you along the way, along the path.
We look forward to that.
We'll have to be learning at their feet, in order to build the thing. All right. All right. So recently, you authored an article, and that centered on this particular subject that we are discussing today.
Yes.
Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. So basically, what I wanted to recognize is that the ACTFA is a transformational agreement that seeks to create a single market for the free flow of goods, passengers, and persons. It is a transformational in the sense that it places us as the world's single largest trade bloc, as reported by the World Trade Organization. And when you look at the numbers, you are talking about the 1.3 billion market availability. Right. So it has the ability to be able to open up our economies and also lift our people and create prosperity for the mass of our people. So, so if you will recall, World Bank has reported that the ACTFA agreement, if it is fully realized, can be able to lift 30 million people out of poverty and people who live below $5.50 out of moderate poverty. So in looking at this, we need to have an enabler. And you agree with me that transportation is going to drive or facilitate this ACTFA agenda. So therefore, we in Africa must look at which mode of transport that would suit our present circumstances. And when I talk about mode of transport, I'm talking about transport by air, land, and sea. Right. And so in doing so, we need to have consideration for certain elements. First of all, we need to look at cost. We need to look at reliability. We need to look at efficiency. We need to also look at capacity, and sometimes we may even add accessibility. Right. When you weigh the various modes of transport, you will realize that the shipping transport is the most cheapest and most reliable and convenient mode of transporting goods, especially through long distances. And this is also largely because our road and railway infrastructure is hugely underdeveloped.
Absolutely.
Because when you talk about the durability of our roads and the capacity to be able to move cargoes, at a long distance, it's a problem. So we will reckon that it is not surprising that the first consignment that was moved by ACTFA in January was done through sea transport.
Yes, and that was, I took Casapreco?
No, it was a cosmetic product that was moved from Ghana to Guinea.
Okay.
So that clearly tells us that the maritime industry will play a major role in this thing. So it is important that the sector takes advantage of this phenomenon to be able to, first of all, strategic planning and development of our maritime industry, and also improving on the maritime transport infrastructure to deal with the struggling volumes of trade among the
nations,
within
the member states.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me come to Doc. I know for the past week you have been very, very busy with some IMO assignment. Day and night you were working seriously, and we're also putting pressure on you to oblige us. Do you mind sharing with us what you were doing for the IMO?
Oh, okay. Just quickly.
Well, I would have thought that now that you've taken a back seat from active service, you would have relaxed. But it seems the pressure is even more now than ever.
Yeah, a number of countries are revising their maritime legislation, especially in the area of maritime security and then maritime safety oversight. Right. So IMO is trying to ensure that there is, if you like, the whole gamut of the law is reflected in national and domestic legislation. Because over the period, IMO has come out with amendments to various international instruments, and many countries, have not. For the moment, I am doing that for Kenya and for Seychelles. Wow. So they can bring their legislation on maritime security, maritime safety oversight up to speed. Right. So that at least it will be current in terms of IMO instruments which it has passed over the period. Right.
So for your information, Doc happened at one point in time to be the chairman of the legal committee of the IMO, and the first black man, indeed, the first black man in the history of the IMO to have done that for 2 consecutive times. And since after that, I think that no black has taken charge.
Yeah, but now I think the new chairperson is a lady, and that is also the first time
a lady is chairing the legal
committee of the IMO, and it's highly commendable.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
She actually served with me as a vice.
Okay.
Chair,
Okay. So she stepped in your shoes when you left. It means that you gave her a good tutelage. Right. So let me find out from you, Doc. How do we position our maritime industry to benefit from this whole AFTA arrangement?
Yes, I think it's important, firstly, to try and understand, what AFTA itself really intends for us. I do recall that long ago I wrote an article, Europe 1992 and West African seaborne trade. Trying to look at how Europe, in coming together, having the European community, what were the elements, what did they seek to achieve by that? And consequently, you transpose the same and try to find out what do we seek to achieve by AFTA. And you would realize that we want, first and foremost, and I think as Chief pointed out, to have a larger market. A larger market could also mean that then when people are looking at your market, they are not looking at countries per se, that is to say, with a population of maybe 8 million, 12 million, etc. But then they are looking, as he said, for a population of 1.3 billion people, expected to grow to about, if you like, 2 billion people by the year 2030. And therefore, it is significant. It's also meant to ensure that the productive capacity of our countries, are harnessed so that we can build strength in terms of production. It's also important to bear in mind that when you do this, you want as much as possible to break barriers. You want to look at the challenges that are associated with a tariff regime. So all of these are important in trying to see exactly where the important factors lie. And he has pointed out that sea plays a very prominent and important role as far as the carriage of goods are concerned. We normally would talk of this in terms of trade. But trade is inextricably tied to transport.
Right.
Without trade, there's no transport. Without transport, there's no trade. Because if goods are produced, they will just lie where they are produced, and they may not get to the ultimate consumer, which is the purpose for producing in the first place. And so trade and transport are inextricably tied. But it is important to bear in mind that when we talk about AFTA, and we are talking about larger markets, then at the same time, you must be thinking of competition. And then you must be thinking of whether you have what it takes. I look back at Europe, and I realized that they started talking about European community way back in the 1950s. And by 1992, there has been strong consolidation of all of the elements that will work together in order to ensure that indeed they can take off. I think Chief mentioned that, I think you mentioned that Ghana is running, and others are maybe crawling. But I'm wondering the speed at which Ghana is running. If we consider this as Ghana running, then I'm sure maybe it's just a 10-meter race. Because yes, indeed, Ghana is ahead in many parameters when you look at them. But remember that you have about 32 least developed countries, among 55 countries in Africa, least developed. When we talk about these LDCs, quite frankly, they lack what it takes, to move along. But you cannot say that because of that, you do not start. Because you are looking at another 23, out of which you may take, let's say, half, about 12 of them, who can be the drivers for change. I know that there are a few countries which ask for some moratorium. We call them the G6, Malawi, Sudan, Madagascar, Ethiopia, Zambia, Zimbabwe. I think they ask for a certain moratorium depending on what they see their economies to be. Because in all of this, you want to remove barriers and to ensure that the tariff regime is revised. And we are looking at almost up to 90% for a number of our countries reviewing their tariff regimes. Do not forget that almost all our countries, they depend on these tariffs for revenue generation. And therefore, if you dislocate the regime as it is, you're going to have a significant impact in terms of revenue shortfalls. For some time, I have been advocating that, that system where we emphasize on revenue collection from the port through a certain tariff regime, etc., we must begin to move away from it, strengthen the internal tax collection mechanisms, such that maybe cigarettes, beer, etc., are the things that we will concentrate on as far as duties and things are concerned in the ports. We let business work, and then we take our tax from businesses. So that is one critical factor. I think that is important. We have a number of least developed countries. We have a few countries that are medium, in terms of development, and then a few drivers here and there. But critically, maritime plays a very, very important role. But we cannot be talking only about maritime. It is important, and I think Chief also pointed that out, that you need to look at air, you need to look at road, you need to, so
rail and all that.
Rail, etc. That seamless connection is very important. I mean, if you have efficient ports, you bring the goods to the port, and then the goods cannot go into the hinterlands. Then you have problems again in your ports, congestion. And this is characteristic of a number of the ports in West and Central Africa. You get me? You look at the port of Abidjan. You look at the port of Tema, Takrady. You look at the port of Dakar. You go to any of these ports, and you realize quite clearly what I call the signs and symptoms. The number of people who are running around the port area. You look at the trucks which are parked haphazardly all over the place. You look at the movement of transit cargo and what we go through. what we do is not transit. It is not transit. You cannot bring cargo which is in transit and then offload them, then repackage them, and then put them on tracks, and that is not transit. If you go to Europe and you talk about transit, then it means that when the truck gets, the moment the ship comes, you offload, the truck gets to the port, it just waits, just shows its documents and drives through, shows its documents and drives through. So that ought to be corrected. The infrastructure has to be right. We have a weak infrastructure. And so when you say we are running, I don't know, as I said, how fast we are running. Because I've talked about the key ports in West and Central Africa. The ports that you can say today are developed are the ports in Morocco, Tangier, etc. Those you can say they are developed, Algeria, but when you come to look at South Sahara, and you look at the ports in this region, I mean, go to Lagos, go to Apapa. Gridlock. I mean, the number of trucks you see in a queue is more than 5-10 kilometers, going to the port. You can't build after on that, because we talk about the global village, and we talk about the fact that if you take Southeast Asia, if you take the Latin American countries, etc., they are all competing. It's a global place, and therefore, why would someone want to take a market only on the basis of its size when that market is characterized by severe inefficiencies? No, but because at the end of the day, it means cost. If you take the cost of transport as a percentage of the total cost of goods, in Europe and in the most of the developed economies, this has moved over the last 15 to 20 years from about 20-25% to now about 5%. However, when you come to developing economies, and especially in Africa, which is seeking to do after, today, still, the cost of transportation is about 15 to 20%. And for landlocked countries, it goes almost up to 30%. I mean, there is no way that you can have a very effective after, working with these kind of figures. It means that we need to get the structures right. So your infrastructure ought to be right. You have to have appropriate legal framework. That ought to be right. Your standards, your structures, your systems, they ought to be right. If you don't get all of these things in place and ensure that there is seamless connectivity among the various modes, the moment you drop a cargo, you know where it is moving and it goes, and all of these must be in place. If we have not been able to do them, then obviously we still have some mileage
long way to go.
We have a long way to cover. And as I said, the signs and symptoms are there. You go to the port of Abidjan, you go to Dakar, you go to Lagos, Apapa, Tinkan, you come to Tema, Takrady, we still face similar problems, similar challenges. They are there for you to see. When you are going towards a port, and immediately you begin to see trucks parked anywhere.
It means?
You see people running around all over. You see the car park full with vehicles. It means that there is something fundamentally wrong.
There's no fluidity.
There's no fluidity. Because if you try to compare it to, say, a port in Singapore, and you look at the trucks and the system in place, the gate mechanisms, and the fact that you hardly see human beings in the port, then it gives you a sense of the efficiency
the system is working,
of the port. Now, when you turn your face and come to the other side and realize that these things I've talked about, they are prevalent in these places, then you can say quite clearly that we face challenges as far as this is concerned.
Right. Thank you very much, Doc. Let me come to you, Chief Obosu. And in your article, you talked about the African maritime industry at the continental level needing a sharp focus and, and also to develop a strategy if we are to realize the full benefits of the AFTA. Can you help us expatiate that?
Okay, so it is important for us to recognize that the maritime industry is a very indispensable industry. For example, if you look at this world-class, beautiful studio, I believe you agree with me that most of the equipment and products here was moved by sea. So it is something that we cannot do without. But our policymakers, both either at the national, regional, or continental level, have developed a slow piecemeal in addressing some of our maritime challenges. That is why you will see that we continue to lag behind in our maritime development. But you also realize that maritime has the ability to make coastal nations prosperous.
Right.
Even on coastal nations, you realize that a country like Ethiopia, they don't have a port or a sea, but they have a shipping line and they take their maritime serious. So without port expansion and having new ports, as our revered doc was saying, we may not be able to deal with the volumes of trade cargo that is going on within our continent, because Africa population itself is increasing.
Yeah.
So once the population is increasing, then you know that the demand for goods are also going to increase. So if you look at the how do we call it, the 2020 list of 100 global container ports, you realize that it only features Egypt. Okay. I think Doc was trying to mention
that is in Africa.
Yes, it only features only Egypt, Morocco, and South Africa. They are I mean, our ports that are quite developed that can deal with a lot of volumes. Those in the southern side, the lesser ports are not competitive. I mean, they are not able to deal with trade volume. So if the ACTFA agreement is going to work, we need, or to be practical or workable, we need to look at how we are going to develop our maritime transport industry. Also, we need to also look at the issue of door-to-door business. It is an industry that is thriving in Africa. Once we pay attention to our maritime industry, this door-to-door business on the continental level will be able to boost our shipping business. And lastly, what I'll say is that there is lack of investment in the maritime industry. So we need to develop policies that will enable our private sectors to be able to diversify into shipping. And once shipping lines, so once we do that, you know that we can also have a ship repair centers and maintenance hub at strategic locations within our coastal countries.
All right, so Doc, let me come to you. From your initial submission, it means that if we don't have the maritime infrastructure right and we don't have the transport infrastructure right, we cannot make the most of this whole after arrangement. What should we be doing? What are some of the things that you would propose in this regard so we can cure this, anomaly?
Yes. Firstly, it's important to realize that most of us, our economies are commodity-based. We export raw materials, cocoa, bauxite, manganese, phosphate. I mean, the whole of the West African sub-region, talk about Central Africa, oil, products, etc. And when you talk about trading amongst yourselves, you need to be asking yourself, are you shipping your cocoa to Burkina Faso? Or are you shipping it to maybe Senegal? Are you shipping it to Mauritania? Are you shipping it to Angola? Where are you shipping? So remember first and foremost that we are dealing in a lot of bulk commodities. These are commodities that our economies depend on. So it means for a very long time, if we are unable to add value to do these things by themselves, then we will not be able to trade amongst ourselves. We can only trade with outside partners as far as these are concerned. What is important to do is what I think AFTA itself seeks to do. first that there should be a policy convergence, so that we do not develop our policies in silos. Okay. So Ghana has its policy, Togo has its policy, Benin has its policy, Nigeria. So when we begin to look at policy convergence, then it means that our policies are now harmonized. We work towards the same goals. And then we try also to look at competitiveness and see where does one have, if you like, superior advantage in a particular area. Can we then concentrate on these areas? Or we'll have a litany of infrastructure. I mean, he talked, for example, about ship repair, shipbuilding, etc. I mean, you can't have ship repair facilities in Abidjan, have them in the port of Tema or Takrade, have them in Togo, have it in, and that then becomes a problem. If we are not able to generate the trade that will go with enlarging the market, then we have serious challenges. We have a lot of investment in the port of Togo recently. We're doing some investment. I think we've done a lot in Tema, in Terminal 3. We're doing a lot of investment in Takrade. Abidjan is doing a lot of investment. If you don't have policies that converge, that get the countries to understand that, look, where do we have competitive advantage? Can we emphasize the competitive advantage in this area? So then, amongst the countries, there would be, if you like, structured competition. And that would allow us to trade with our partners from a position of strength. So that is important. Then, I mean, if you take, for example, the transit trade, one of the hindrances that we face has to do with currency. We deal in Ghana cedis and sometimes dollar. Our neighboring countries whose transit cargo passes through here, they deal in the CFA. And sometimes convertibility is an issue. So having, if you like, an African payment platform that allows money to move freely is part of all this process of AFTA, which is important. So a robust maritime industry, important though it is, must go with some other factors. And one of them is the digital payment system. And that, I know, ought to be worked upon. Then, additionally, as I said, to be able to deal with the issues of congestion, the inefficiencies, to what extent are we adopting technology? We've done quite well. I mean, especially if you take Ghana, when you talk about running, maybe that's one area where I can say we are running. Yes, because we haven't done badly in terms of digitization. But if you go to places like Mali, you go to Malawi, you go to some other countries, in West and Central Africa, you would realize that the footprint, the digital footprint, is very, very low. And consequently, it becomes difficult for you to trade amongst yourselves in that regard. So we need to be looking at technology, harnessing the potential of technology. Today, people are using blockchain technology. People are using the Internet of Things. They are using artificial intelligence. To what extent can we deploy these things for our benefit, especially in the movement of goods and services? I mean, look at the whole of West and Central Africa. We have no passenger service, for example. We cannot develop a cruise business, for example. So after it's expected to open up these things, so there will be investment in these areas. So it is important for us to try and first and foremost have a policy, comprehensive policy, that, as I said, converges with the policies of the other countries within the framework of AFTA. And then out of that policy, we must be looking more at the benefits derivable from the entire blue economy. So that the forward and backward linkages are there for the countries to benefit from. So that is one of the key things we need to be looking at. Beyond that, if you look at Southeast Asia, they've developed in recent times what they call maritime technoparks. Okay. You know, these are technoparks. Okay. These are technology parks, you know, that are associated closely with the sea.
Right.
And consequently, there are linkages between various industries. It works just like the free zone system, but the emphasis is on technology. Right. You know, driving technology and therefore using it as a means of moving cargo, moving it by sea, and then utilizing whatever resources that they can gather within that particular area. So that is one of the things that, so you have to get the policy right, you have to get the legal framework right, you have to get the administrative framework right, you have to get the systems, the standards. We talk about standards, but sometimes our standards do not measure up. Okay. You know, and if our standards do not measure up, we don't become competitive. And remember that what you want to do with a large market is to woo investors, so that investors can invest big time, not the droplets of investments that we get, but big time investments. If we are thinking about, say, the automotive industry, the way we have started, how can we let it grow such that we'll be able to use this as a base? You know, so we need to get some of these things right and in place. And once we do that, and as I said, the maritime sector plays a pivotal role. But I have always said that unless you adopt an integrated approach in dealing with this, you will develop your maritime sector, but if your transportation networks to the hinterlands are not developed, it will come to choke your maritime sector again, especially your ports. So it is important that as you develop your ports, as you take them to very high standards, you must ensure that the arteries through which cargo passes, you know, out there, your rail network. I mean, can you fathom that you grow your business in the port and there is no rail connectivity to the hinterlands? You are going to use the same roads. I mean, leaving the port of Tema, you have basically two, if you like, three ways of getting out into town. And apart from the dedicated motorway, which the rest are all congested. And even today, the motorway is congested. I mean, there's a similar thing in Abidjan. There's a similar thing when you are getting out of the port of Takoradi. You know, so this is, if you like, symptomatic of a number of the ports. And our consciousness is important so that we begin to remedy these defects, put in place appropriate infrastructure, the rail network, the road network. If you go to Europe, as I said, by 1992, that they said now we are ready, you know, for European Union, for the European community. The networks for road, for rail, for river transport systems
were already done.
I mean, they were working. They were working. And I have visited a place in the Netherlands where 150 trucks leave every morning doing distribution in Europe. 150. This is just one small company. 150 trucks, they leave to do distribution all over Europe. You know, we haven't talked about security, but security is key. I mean, look at what is happening in Guinea, you know, now. And so, if you like, what is important for them now is to ensure that first, safety first. You know, they want to ensure that security. So all efforts you are making towards enhancing trade is then moved to the back burner. So security must be assured. If security is not assured, then we can't remove the barriers. Because every country fears infiltration of vagabonds, rebels, etc. And so every time we are closing our borders, you can't have an AFTA which closes its borders all the time like we do. You can't have an AFTA that thrives on the closure of borders. So there must be security. Recently, we had the National Integrated Maritime Strategy, NIMS, you know, and that form of strategy is important. And it must not be only for Ghana. That is where I talk about the policy convergence. So that when Ghana develops this, the other countries as well, they develop something along those same lines. which means then that when we talk about our waters being secured, they are not secured only for one country, but they are secured along the entire chain. You know, and when our borders are secured and people feel that there is safety and security, then trucks can move in and out, goods can come to the port, vessels can travel by sea without let or hindrance.
All right.
So we are afraid of piratical attacks along our coast.
Yes, with regards to the border closures, I think that most governments now are giving reasons, using COVID as a reason. And Ghana, I know we have preferred a lot of reasons why we cannot open our borders at the moment. Do you think that we are being too, hard?
No, I think COVID, if you like, is different. You know, it brings something. What today we'll use the word the new normal. It brings something different in the fray. But we are talking about this as if there were no COVID. No COVID as it were, as if there were no COVID. COVID would mean that we should take some steps to ensure that the population is safe, etc. But beyond COVID, you would agree with me that even before COVID, Nigeria closed its border here at the time. The next time,
those are some of the challenges associated with the implementation of this outer thing. Because if you close your border, I'll also sit back. I'm also a sovereign nation, and I'll also close my border. So that you don't take advantage of me.
And all of that is because of insecurity. And one of the elements within the AFTA is also the issue of competition. If you recall, initially Nigeria did not want to be a part of this whole AFTA arrangement, or because of competition. One of the key things is rules of origin. I saw on the thing you showed earlier on that Rosewood brought from Nigeria into Ghana and being sent elsewhere. I keep saying, yes, angels don't do business. But the people who have adopted free trade areas, they work on the basis of integrity, on the basis of honesty, on the basis of trust. And these are important. You can't just shed these values and think that, the systems will work by themselves. No. The elements of trust are important. And therefore, you would only do random checks from time to time and allow the free flow of trade. That is the essence of trade facilitation. Goods are going to come from China. I have no doubt in my mind. Because now we are removing tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers. These things are going to be, if you like, colored in some way, as if they were originating from Africa. The rules of origin do not permit these things, and yet they will be shipped into another place in Africa, as if it is coming from Africa. But these things may have come from China. So, and that is why it is important that we get these things right. Rules of origin must be made known. They must be enforceable. So it is clear that when we say we have removed barriers, we have removed barriers in respect of things that originate from the continent itself.
Right. Okay, so the program is IMPOUNDED here on Metropolitan Television, and we're discussing how to develop a robust maritime industry for effective continental trade. And you just heard Dr. Emmanuel Kofimbia, who is a maritime law consultant and a legal practitioner at Alliance Partners. He is the immediate past chief executive of the Ghana Shippers Authority. And we also have in the studios Chief Obosu Mohammed, who is the executive director of the Africa Institute for African Maritime Development. Yes, and they are the two gentlemen we are doing the discussion with tonight. We'll go for a quick break. When we return, we'll continue the discussion. Please stay.
Every now and again, Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Go Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Go Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Go Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience that is less vibrations. Fill up with Goil Super XP Run 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is, you still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
So you're welcome back. That was just a quick break, and we zoom straight into the discussion once again. And this time around, I'm coming to you, Chief Obusu Mohammed, and to find out from you. Doc mentioned the EU, and 1992, how they kick-started the, trade within themselves, and how they are thriving now. Are there any lessons we can learn? I believe there were hidden challenges when they started, yes. But they managed to come on an even keel. And then we all, see them as, something that we should emulate. What are some of the lessons we can learn as far as this after thing is concerned so that we can also have a smooth sail?
Yes, thank you very much. We need to understand that the EU has a very robust road and sea transport infrastructure. That is why you realize that 1/3 of the movement of goods is by sea, which represents around 40% and 44% by road and 9% by rail. So it shows that the road transport is the most viable means of transporting goods within the EU, largely because they have a very robust how do we call it, highway systems that interconnects within the various EU countries. So, one, we need to develop our transport infrastructure, be it sea, be it highways and the railway, and especially those that, as Doc mentioned, those that connects to other countries. Secondly, we also have to look at the issue of a single currency. Doc mentioned something like that earlier. The EU has a single currency called the euro. Africa, we do not have something like that. It has been on the banner for a long time, but that political will and commitment is not there. So it is important that we put our heads together to be able to have a single currency that can support the trade among ourselves. Thirdly, what they also did that we don't have is that they have a single European transport area. For example, with respect to the air transport, they have the air single European sky. In respect to the rail transport, they also have the European railway area, and same as with the road, the single European road area. In respect to the sea transport, they have what we call the blue belt. All these things are to ensure seamless and smooth passage of goods and passengers across the EU borders. So what the ACTFA can adopt is also to have a single transport area for our continent, for the different modes of transport, so that there can be some seamless transition of our goods and passengers. So we can also adopt that. Currently, intra-EU trade is as low as 15% as compared to Asia, which is 61%, and EU, which is 67%. So therefore, there's an opportunity for us to grow our maritime and other means of transport, especially with the maritime, because it is the most cheapest and convenient way of transporting bulk cargoes. And indeed, Doc also mentioned there's a research which also says that about 15 to 20% of the cost of transport accounts for the import cost, and that if we are able to reduce transport significantly, to be able to increase intra-EU trade to about 25%. I think that we must also aware our mind to this. And lastly, what they did that I think that it is very innovative and that we must look at it. They have something we call the SPC, that is the short sea promotion centers, which they've set up along their coastal nations, to ensure a smooth transit of
goods and passengers.
Goods and persons within the European short sea network, which they've also created. So African coastal nations must also begin to look at such measures and also create that to ensure that flexibility and the interconnectivity and networking among themselves within the coastal states.
Right. Okay, so I think that I would like to announce that the phone lines are activated right now, and the number to dial is 020-552-8353, 020-8825-552-8353. We'll be glad to pick your calls. There are some messages that have come in, but let me, before I come to the messages, Doc, let me come to you and find out whether you are aware of the 2050 Africa Integrated Maritime Strategy, and then the, what do we call it, the Revised African Maritime Transport Charter. Can you educate us on these?
Yes, along the lines of AFTA, for a very long time, this question of having an integrated maritime strategy, has come to the fore. The AU has tried to look at the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and try to fashion out what would suit various sectors or segments, And in this, it has looked, for example, at infrastructure generally. It has looked at trade generally, and AFTA is born out of that. As part of that strategy, that is the maritime side of things. And it's looking at 2050, by which time it expects that we should have had very efficient ports, we should have an integrated transport system, our road, rail, and air networks should be seamless and should work efficiently. Because, as we speak, there is no strategy, even though we've been talking about this for a very long time. If you want to travel to Cabo Verde, that is Cape Verde, you would have to go to Portugal before you connect and come. Otherwise, you change plane 4 times in order to get to Cape Verde. Just recently, I had a client who wanted a vessel to load cargo from Nigeria, steel coils, and to send to Cameroon.
Doc, sorry, hold your fire. This is a very interesting point. I'm very much interested in it. But let's go on to the phone lines and welcome David from Tema, who's our first caller. Hello, good evening, David.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
I've really listened to Doc, and I've listened to him carefully. I mean, he's a great asset when it comes to maritime industry, and he has really expatiated on a lot of things and the kind of things which should be done to improve and to trade and in the trade industry when it comes to the transportation of goods within the sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
Please, I want to know that I want to know from Doc if the Port at Tema, which is the MPS Terminal 3. Yeah, it's a modern port. So I want to know if it matches the standards in Egypt, because this is a port which was constructed, I think, some few years ago. So I just want to know if it matches the standards in Egypt and South Africa and Morocco and other places around the world. Thank you.
All right, Dave, thank you very much indeed. We're grateful to you for your time. He wants to know whether MPS can be compared to the ports in South Africa.
Yeah. Yes, in terms of infrastructure, what exists by way of cranes, etc., the beds,
equipment,
the depth of the beds, etc., it compares with any you can talk about in a developed port.
Right.
But the port and ship interface, you may be okay, but you also have to be okay in the port and land interface.
Yeah.
So if you take Terminal 3, it may have all the ingredients, that relate to a container port, and therefore works efficiently in that regard.
Right.
But how quickly then do you move the goods out of the port for the purpose of distribution? And that is the area where I said we are lacking.
Right.
But in terms of what it has by way of equipment, by way of infrastructure, the depth of the beds, etc., it compares with any of the developed ports that you can talk about.
Okay. All right, so you continue the submission on the 2050 Africa Integrated Maritime Strategy and the revised Maritime Transport Charter.
Yes.
Okay, and that's why we have another caller.
No
so,
problem.
yes.
Yeah.
All right, so hello, good evening.
And I'm calling from Tema.
Say again.
My name is Dr. Buxton, and I'm calling from Tema.
All right, sure. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Please go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I would like to share my idea on this issue concerning the issues mentioned by Dr. India regarding the challenges facing the continent. Particularly when we look at the West African sub-region. And
Dr. Martin, can you please up your voice a bit? We seem not to be hearing you clearly.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
When we look at the issues concerning maritime trade and maritime shipping, Dr. India actually raised a number of issues. The challenges facing the West African sub-region. I would like to, this has to do with a question. Ask Dr. India if we are starting to address some of these serious and critical challenges facing Ghana in particular. Where do we start from? Because each and every time some of these programs are held and the discussions goes on, and we don't seem to get the government acting on them. So if we are to start, where do we start from at this point, so that at least in some 3, 4, 5 years, we'll be able to get some solutions? So that is a question to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Martin from Tema. We're grateful to you. I think he just basically wants to know from the gamut or litany of issues we've stated that is impacting our maritime industry and why we cannot have a smooth implementation or smooth, as it were, efficient trade, continental trade, in 3 to 4 years' time or 5 years. I mean, how do we get there if we start now?
Yes, it's important that you cannot wish things, to get better. You need to have a plan. You need to have a plan. Your plan must be based on a certain policy. What do you consider important? And I talked about competitive advantage. Is it everything you want to go into? No, and therefore you have a policy. So the
you talk about the convergence
and that gets all you seek to do. And then out of that policy, you then develop a certain legislative framework that will back that policy. Then you bring into being your actions, that is administrative procedures, etc., in ensuring that you achieve the aims that the policy sets. And if you don't do that, what you do is more of firefighting. You do more of touch and go. And therefore, you see a weakness in a particular area and you run quickly to try and address it.
And the problem remains.
And then the problem remains. Or sometimes even the problem becomes worse. I mean, if you go to Takoradi Port, for example, and you see the way in which, I think we're not developing a container place over there, but if you look at where we have to shuttle containers to and bring them back into the port, you realize that straight away there is a challenge because the road itself is so narrow, you know, with these trucks on it. So for me, the starting point would have to be a comprehensive maritime policy that then undergirds whatever vision that you have for yourself.
Right.
And then out of that policy, you develop an appropriate legal framework for ensuring that the facets of the policy, you have timelines, you have time frames for implementing them. You know, you have KPIs which are set for particular
performance
things,
indexes, okay.
and therefore you expect that by a certain time you
Right.
should reach a certain goal.
All right. I'll come back to you, Doc, and we would remind listeners that recently we launched the National Integrated Maritime Strategy, and I also found out from you which institution should lead this charge in the drafting of comprehensive maritime policy. But let's go on to the phone lines and welcome Reverend Sam Kojo. Good evening, sir. Rev.
Good evening.
Can they speak up a bit and the flow?
Good evening.
Yes, good evening, Rev. Can you speak up a bit, Rev? Can you speak up a bit? We can barely hear you. No, I think Rev's line is not helping us here. Maybe he would have to call again. We can barely hear him, so I'm sure the producers will try and work the lines. If we are getting him back, or they will adjust it for us to hear him clearly, then we can do so. But let me find out from you, Doc. Yes, we launched the names recently, and then you are advocating for a comprehensive maritime strategy. Who should lead that charge?
I think, this one has to be, if you like, maybe at the center there will be a coordinator, maybe Ghana Maritime Authority as a coordinator, but then it should work in collaboration with all the other agencies, the other stakeholders, as you mentioned. I was talking about what we've been trying to do as a continent or even as ECOWAS over a long period of time. And if you look at the road network from Nigeria into Ghana, it's clear that we are not there. From what you talk about Europe, we're trying to get a ship for steel coils from Nigeria to Cameroon, a ship which had its own cranes to be able to pick cargo from Nigeria to Cameroon. Nigeria, Cameroon, they are neighbors. Up to now, we have not been able to get a vessel for that.
Wow.
So you can tell quite clearly. I talked about the air and the challenges with it. You come to the sea, the West Coast trade. People have tried time without number, and it's not working. And if you want to do an after, you need to start from the regional blocks first, so that ECOWAS must be working, and then you go to SADC, and then SADC is working. Then you go to the northern part of Africa, and it's working. You go to the central part, and then it's working. So once you do that, when you're bringing them together, it becomes much, much easier. So that is one thing that we need to look at. AIMS 2050 tries to look at, for example, among other things, a common EEZ, for our exclusive economic zone. So we can tap the resources of the EEZ. But then we need to understand what it connotes. And can we have the capacity for surveillance over these waters? It is important because even now, with what we have, surveillance for maritime security is an issue. And it's important for us to address that. The African Maritime Transport Charter, I doubt, at the last count, I think we needed about 2 or 3 more countries to ratify to bring it into being. I will need to make some checks and then find
see
out
whether they've done that.
and see. But once again, what it does is it looks at the main segments, like the port. It looks at the interests of shippers. It looks at shipping lines, and try to build a basis for ensuring that there is a strategy that all of us would look at Unfortunately, if you take the shipping line segment, the whole of West and Central Africa, we don't have any shipping lines of our own. You know, so the strategy is to try and ensure that we develop a mechanism such that over a 10 to 15-year period, there will be injection of capital and investment so that we can build efficient ports, we can have efficient, if you like, road transport networks, we can have efficient air transport networks, and then at the same time, we can have appropriate shipping networks with our own, you know, shipping lines. When I say our own shipping lines, not, if you like, government shipping lines, as it were, but enabling the private sector to invest in this very important area of shipping.
Right. Okay, so on the back of that, let me come to you, because in your article, you advocated for fleet ownership on the African continent, because you believe that that is very, very low. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's like Doug just said, it's quite sad that when you look at our West African coast nations, we can't boast of anyone with a shipping line. You take off Ghana, there's no shipping line. You talk of Cameroon, you talk of Kenya and the rest. You know, so it's a problem.
Your mic is somewhere. Yeah, sure. Good.
It's a problem. So that is why earlier on I mentioned that Ethiopia, which is a landlocked country, has a shipping line, which is the Ethiopian shipping line, which is vibrant. So you could see that they've taken the shipping industry serious. So even if at the national level we may not be interested in owning ships, like Doc said, we can have a regional shipping line. In Ghana, we have the regional Maritime University. So it's the same way we can have a West Coast shipping line to be able to drive investment. And also, we can look at having smaller vessels, which are
feeder
multi-purpose.
vessels.
Yes, feeder vessels, which are multi-purpose, so that we can be able to stay or be competitive within the shipping market. You understand?
I know African Independent Coastal Services they tried something like that.
I mean, a number of...
Stanley Aholo and his group,
I mean,
I don't know what happened.
They brought Nadobia, they brought, I mean, it's been tried even in Nigeria now. I know that they are looking at the West Coast trade, you know. The challenge has always been the level of investment, you know, in it. And this must be more of, if you like, a supply-driven service than a demand-driven service. So if you want to have a demand-driven service, then you would wait and you will get nothing. But if you have the capacity, and then gradually with marketing, people are made interested in moving cargo along the West Coast, which is so important, you know, because how do you move bulk, the bulk of cargo to Nigeria? There have been times when we have had challenges with our steel factories here trying to move cargo into Nigeria. You know, it is these same vessels which call from Europe, come here, that we have to rely on, you know, on their southbound leg, you know, to carry cargoes to those places. And you want to ship something to Angola, sometimes you would have to, the vessel will have to go to Europe first, and then later on call and bring it to Angola. So that indeed it's a very, very serious
incentive. All right. So this one says, in order of merit, what are the various steps to tackle the inefficiencies? To Dr. I think Dr. Mbia, you've answered this one already. And this one says, Chief mentioned door-to-door and how Maritime could facilitate that. Can he expose on how really? I think in your earlier submission, you mentioned delivery of door-to-door and all that. Maybe just in 1 minute.
Yes, okay. So the door-to-door is more like you being in the comfort of your home and giving your goods to a shipping line to take your goods to your... It's seamless.
All the way.
All the way. It's fast. And it is thriving in Africa. You know, it's a big business. Almost every country, you see flyers moving goods, you know, to Nigeria or from Europe to Ghana to Nigeria or to as far as Congo, South Africa, and the rest. It's thriving. So it is something that can boost our maritime industry.
Right. This one says, good evening, sir. I want to ask Doc if MPS port is up to standard or is not on the same scale with ports in Egypt, Morocco, and South Africa. If yes, then Ghana as a country has a long way. I think you've answered this question. David Adu, he called from Tamale.
In terms of the infrastructure, they are standard. I mean, the depth that we have today will take the modern generation vessels.
Yes.
You know, yes. So,
okay. This one says, hello, I asked this question last week. He says, hello, Bernard. This is not Bernard, this is Kennedy. Pierrot. He says, I asked this question last week, but didn't get an answer. May I please ask if you can kindly let me know how to reach owners of shipping vessels that call the GPHA ports? Kind regards. Okay, so you can come to the Marketing and Corporate Affairs Department Monday or any day of the week of your choice, and they will be able to deal with this issue, Pierrot. Thank you very much indeed. I think at this juncture, gentlemen, we would have to say a big thanks to our viewers and listeners for joining us on Our Import tonight. Remember, tonight we've been discussing how to develop a robust maritime sector, maritime industry for efficient continental trade, and we dealt with after in perspective. I mean, Ghana assigned onto it, and we house the secretariat here in Accra, and so there's no way we can extricate ourselves from it. I'd like to say a big thanks to Dr. Emmanuel Kofimbia, who is a maritime law consultant and legal practitioner at Alliance Partners, immediate past Chief Executive, Ghana Shippers Authority, and also to Chief Mohammed Obosu, who is Executive Director of the Institute for African Maritime Development. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for gracing our import tonight. We are deeply grateful to you, and we believe that as and when we knock on your doors, you would always oblige us. My name is Kennedy Mona. God willing, next week we will bounce back with another edition of Iron Port. And remember, the abridged version of Iron Port is aired on Ghana Television every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Have a super week ahead.